Thank you everyone for joining us today, and welcome to our May virtual user groups. Today's topic is around cloud and containers. We've got a lot of special guests on the line today. We've got a lot of great information lined up for you, so we will get right into it. Just a couple of housekeeping items. Just as a reminder, the session is being recorded. So you will receive a copy of the recording within about 24 hours after the meeting concludes. So give us some time to get all of that together for you guys. We will send it out. You will also receive a copy of any PowerPoints or presentations that you see today. Obviously, we will not be able to send you demos, but you will be able to see PowerPoints. So you will receive copies of those. If you have any questions for our presenters today, please use the Q&A feature. We will be monitoring those questions throughout the meeting. The presenters will take time to answer those questions throughout their presentation. We will also have time at the end of each presentation to answer questions. So please use the Q&A feature to submit your questions. All right, let's get started. I have a couple of things for you guys per usual. Let me get into my slideshow here. All right, so as I said, welcome. Today's topic is cloud and containers. We have a couple of, actually probably new speakers that you guys probably have not had a chance to interact with maybe many times yet or before. We have Sachin Sanchetti, a product manager, and we have Pranay Shah, Senior Director of Engineering, who will be presenting to you today. We also have Mark Nesson and Angie Hildak on the line, who will be assisting and answering questions for the group today as well. I know a lot of you guys know them too, so they'll be around to help with some Q&A. All right, guys, we've said it before and we'll say it again, IBI is back. We are a business unit of Cloud Software Group. So I'm sure you guys have heard, we are now an entity of Cloud Software Group. IBI, its own brand, is back, along with all of our IBI products and the solutions that you guys have known and loved for many years. With that, we have brought back IBI.com. This is where we would love for you guys to go to start finding all of your IBI needs. If you're looking for any products and solutions or information on those, if you're looking for customer stories, IBI.com is the place to go. You can also find, we have now started adding all of our resources out there. All the on-demand user groups, all of the Focus Fridays, all the webinars are now being held on IBI.com. So as a reminder, no more tibco.com. I still get a lot of folks asking why they can't find things on tibco.com. We are not using tibco.com. We are not posting on tibco.com. So IBI.com is your new place to go. You will also be able to user groups and Focus Fridays, events and webinars that we are hosting. Those will also be posted under the event section. You can access support from IBI.com. It is at the bottom of the page, a link to take you to your support channel for you guys to put in tickets and get the support that you need. What's still coming? We are increasing product documentation. So we're constantly adding new features and new data sheets to the website. We are also putting together training and education opportunities for you guys, and those will be posted to the IBI.com website, as well as a link to the community, which is still Tibco community, but it'll have an easy access for you guys to join through IBI.com. So again, cannot stress it enough, IBI.com is your new best friend. That is where you can find all things IBI. As I mentioned, under the event section, sorry, this is from last month. We'll need to update it, but this is where you will find all of your upcoming events. So as I mentioned, any of the Focus Fridays coming, user groups, in person and virtual, as well as any other webinars that we will be hosting, you can find here. As I mentioned, the community, we are still on the Tibco community. We do have our own IBI WebFOCUS portal within the community. So if you guys are not members of the community yet, you can register and join and be a part of the community. And from there, you can go into the WebFOCUS portal and interact and engage with your fellow community members, as well as our team. We are working to update and kind of give a facelift to the WebFOCUS portal. Stay tuned to see that new content coming, new articles coming, new discussions coming. So we're working to give that a nice, pretty facelift. Within the within the community is the WebFOCUS portal. So this is where you can go to get that knowledge and that engagement from your community members. We have a discussion board. That's where you guys can look through the questions that your fellow community members are asking. This is very similar to kind of how we were doing Focal Point. So you guys can go out there and, go through those questions and see if there's something that is relevant to you or something that can be answered. If not, ask the question to the community and your fellow community members will be happy to engage. We do have private groups out there. There is an IBI user group and there is a Focus Friday group. If you guys are interested in joining those, just click under the group section and join. Within the user group, I just remind you guys about upcoming user groups that are going on. You're also able to interact with your fellow user group members, people who attend the user groups. We talk about upcoming topics and surveys and things like that. Also within the Focus Friday with the Walters and Mark, you can find all of the recordings of the Focus Fridays as well as their presentations after each month. So if you want to join that group too and be a part of the Focus Friday group, you're more than welcome to. Getting social with us, we'd love for you guys to follow and subscribe all of our social channels. I know a lot of you guys already follow us and subscribe on LinkedIn, and so thank you for that. We're very active on all of these channels. LinkedIn and Twitter have been around for a while. We do have a new YouTube channel. So if you guys are following the old IBI YouTube channel, you're probably not seeing much activity on it. We do have a new channel, so if you're not, when I send this presentation out, if you click this link, this will take you to the new YouTube channel. This is where we are also posting all of our recordings are going out here, as well as any kind of blogs or how-tos. We're going to be posting some training videos out here. So this will be your new place to go on the YouTube channel. As a reminder of the Tech Refresh program, if anyone is interested in upgrading to WebFOCUS 9, we have a program that has a 3-stage process here that's meant to be effective and fast and pain-free for you guys to upgrade. Dan Ortolani's team is heading this initiative up. So if you guys are interested in wanting to know more about the Tech Refresh program and how it would look for your organization, if you would please mark that on your evaluation form at the end of the meeting, or just send myself an email and we will make sure we get you in touch with the team to get all of this started for you guys. You can also visit ibi.com, WebFOCUS Technology Refresh Program to get more information on this program as well. The TIPCO Academy, this is, your self-paced e-learning courses. So there are a few out there starting for the WebFOCUS 9. If you guys are interested, we have some data sheets out there. Again, I'll send you this link. You'll be able to access these after the meeting if you want to get some tutorials and other assets that will help you learn that new skill or advance your skills with using WebFOCUS. All right, guys, that is all that I have for you guys. At the end of this meeting, I will send out a link for the evaluation form. As always, your feedback is greatly appreciated. We'd love to have your feedback. So if you could, please fill that out for us. And on that note, I am going to turn it over to Sachin, and he will begin his presentation.
Thank you, Shay. So let me share my screen. So can you see it? Yeah. Okay, that's great. Give me a second. Okay, sorry for that. So hello, everyone. Thanks for joining in. As I'm the first time panelist here, so let me introduce myself. I'm Sachin Sancheti, product manager at IBI. I have been with the industry for about 13 years and with TIPCO and IBI for about 7 years. For IBI, I look after cloud and container side of IBI WebFOCUS. So let's get started with the webinar. So initially, we have standard confidentiality and disclaimer slides and about IBI slides. So I'll kind of skip it and start with the agenda. And now that I'm presenting it, maybe I'll stop video as well. So as our first topic for today, I'll be talking about cloud market trends. We will explore the current landscape and discuss the emerging trends that are shaping the industry. We will also talk about how organizations are leveraging these trends to drive their digital transformation. Next, then we'll talk about how IBI offers comprehensive offering to support these market trends. and I'll talk about the key features and benefits of IBI Cloud Solutions. As a cloud offering, we have two solutions. So first is WebFOCUS Managed Cloud. I'll talk about its offerings. Then I'll talk about WebFOCUS Containerization and its high-level feature, which makes it your go-to option if you're looking for a self-hosted solution. Then I'll talk about supporting utility, that is WebFOCUS Health, WebFOCUS Health Check Tool and its features. And I'll drive through WebFOCUS Containerization journey so far. And towards the end, we'll take question and answer. But as Shay said, feel free to type in your question in between the presentation. We'll try to answer them. So without any further ado, let's get started. So before we dive into specifics of cloud computing market trends, let's understand how it works, how it started. So cloud computing for root can be tracked back to 1950 when the mainframe computers were developing. The concept of time sharing allowed multiple users to access a single computer, and that's when the cloud computing incepted. However, the cloud computing itself became popular in early 2000 when and then Amazon Web Services, that is AWS, they pioneered it by launching Elastic Compute Cloud, that is EC2 services in 2006. And following that, major players such as Google, they introduced GCP, and Microsoft came up with Azure. They entered the markets, and these platforms offer a range of cloud services, including infrastructure as service, we call it as IaaS, platform as service, we call it as PaaS, and software as service as SaaS. So due to COVID pandemic, 90% of respondents stated that cloud usage is higher than initially planned, and hence organizations are accelerating their migration to cloud. Hence, cloud computing has experienced rapid growth, and adoption has grown across the industries. According to various reports, it is expected to grow at CAGR of around 16% till 2028. Today, cloud computing has evolved around basic infrastructure as a service and being on one public cloud to multi-cloud. Now the customer support or prefer multi-cloud. Literally 92% of enterprise are adopting multi-cloud strategies, and 82% are adopting to hybrid strategies to leverage a combination of public, private, and even on-premise infrastructure. This approach provides flexibility, data security, and the ability to choose the best cloud service from multiple providers. And because of this, cloud platform has become an integral part of the IT infrastructure. This shift towards cloud computing offers benefits such as reduced upfront costs, scalability, global accessibility, enhanced security, and simplified IT management. So with this, migrating businesses to the public cloud can cut companies or organizations' total cost of ownership up to by 40%. But all is not hunky-dory. There are its own challenges, such as enterprises are wasting 30% of their cloud budgets because of the reasons such as over-provisioning, idle resources because of lack of monitoring and analysis tools, and etc. One of the primary reasons, as I said, over-provisioning. Organization allocate more resources than actually needed, and it leads to unnecessary cost. Often there is lack of monitoring and management of their resources as well, resulting in like resources are provisioned but are not actively monitored, and because of that they are idle and they are not used, and customer have to pay for the usage as well, right? So because of that, it impacts the cloud budget as well. So all of these factors require, like moving to cloud, all of these require combination of proper resource planning, continuous monitoring, optimization strategy, and effective cost management practices. All of this may sound very complex and costly, but IBI is here to help. We are here to help you. And this problem can be solved by our two comprehensive solutions that are based on managed cloud and container edition. So first is IBI WebFOCUS Managed Cloud, and other is IBI WebFOCUS Container Edition. WebFOCUS Managed Cloud is a turnkey solution. It is hosted and managed by IBI with absolutely no maintenance on customer end. It is backed by award-winning customer support and SREs who work 24/7, 365 days. for customers. Our cloud native technology ensures that your application and service run with maximum efficiency and performance. This turnkey solution works with both AWS and Azure platform, giving flexibility to customers to choose the platform that align best with their strategy. In case customers are still looking for to manage their own environment and have preference towards self-hosted solution, then we have IBM WebFOCUS Container Edition. It uses the same leading edge technology that private cloud or managed cloud uses, and it can be integrated with your DevOps pipeline for faster development and upgrade and migration. So this is high level. Let's talk about these products and their high level features in next slide. So I'll start with IBM WebFOCUS Managed Cloud Solution here. As I mentioned earlier, IBM WebFOCUS Cloud is hosted and managed by IBM. So it is ready to use product directly to customer. So as soon as customer purchases the solution, we provision up and running WebFOCUS environment within 24 hours on your choice of cloud platform, either AWS or Azure. And we not only help provisioning and configuring IBS WebFOCUS, but we also configure or provide critical parameters such as network, CPU, RAM, storage, and even operating system as per customer requirements for their optimal performance. As there is an inclination toward hybrid and multi-cloud strategies, as I discussed in the market trends, we do support that as well. In case customer want to connect to their databases on-premise servers or some other cloud platform, the support team would help with integration by creating a tunnel or secured network to their databases. So that makes it more secure. From a security point of view, we do configure and manage anti-malware protection and intrusion detection to keep environment more secure for organizations and customers. Further, to keep it more safe, customer can configure their own SSO or IDP of their choice. Customer can integrate with their existing LDAP so they can use the same credential they use to log in into their corporate network. They can also configure identity and access management roles and security groups. With that, they can do the geofencing, where let's say customer doesn't want their WebFOCUS to be public. They can, or let's say they want to block Europe and keep it public for other regions, they can totally do it. For software patches and updates, Managed Cloud applies and install all of these updates and patches of software, be it WebFOCUS or OS or any pre-installed software on regular basis. This process is absolutely automated. So we do it time and time on regular basis. IBM enables your team to apply critical security patches during and outside selected maintenance windows. So we are pretty much flexible when to apply those patches. So it gives flexibility to customer. Further, from compliance point of view, we follow industry compliances such as ISO, SOC 3, PCI for auditing and certification of data centers, policies and procedures for a compliant, trustworthy organization. Also, we have industry standard logging and monitoring in place to check health of environment and to provide an optimum performance. So these logs can be provided to customer logging system for security compliance purposes if required. We have been cases where we have provided this log to the customers. Along with this, we also monitor and investigate alerts that and support system take actions whenever they are triggered. So customer don't have to rely on this, or they can be relaxed and just use WebFOCUS. We have tons of KPIs such as CPU, memory, DBMS time, number of user requests, etc. To monitor the performance WebFOCUS and infrastructure and extract optimal performance and keeping the cost in check. So there won't be any issues of over provisioning or a lack of resources or idle resources. So that helps keep the cost in check. On product and infrastructure support, our award-winning support system and SREs work for customer 24/7, 365 days. They are the single point of contact for any escalation request and streamlining support experience. We ensure that our environment is up and running with uptime of 99.99%. Also, we have automated backup using standard snapshot functionality, which is the usual trend across industry. We schedule them on regular intervals, and as well as we can restore them as well with demand from customers. So it is on demand facility. So these are pretty much high level feature of managed cloud. I have sorry, I have listed them down here on this slide. I won't be covering this again, but whenever we share this presentation with you, you can go through it. So let's move on to the next cloud option, that is IBM WebFOCUS Container Edition. So IBM WebFOCUS Container uses the same leading edge technology for private cloud, and on-prem. And here are the top level features to name few. So for deployment, we support market leading and latest container orchestration technology, that is Kubernetes. Our container, they are pretty much flexible. They can be built on any open container initiative, that is OCI compliant runtime. And they are currently, to name few, there are market leading Kubernetes service providers such as AWS, EKS, Google Kubernetes Engine, that is GKE, Microsoft Azure Kubernetes Service, AKS, and Red Hat OpenShift 2. And not to mention, as cloud managed services, Container Edition also support hybrid cloud strategies as well. I'm covering it in only high level because Pranay will be covering about this Kubernetes, why we are using it, and how it works in more technical depth during the presentation. So I'll move to the next feature. So next feature is cost effective. As I mentioned before, one of the main reasons for budget wastage is over provisioning. So here are we leverage the horizontal pod scaling. Usually we call it as a HPA feature of Kubernetes. So here customer can define the minimum and maximum number of pods they want to scale based on the workload or parameters like CPU, memory usage, etc. So they can scale up and down the pods and replicas based on the workload. But we are not using this feature as is. We have introduced a custom metrics, which is again a combination of CPU, memory, total request. It can be further modified with more parameters. But using these parameters, what we do is we calculate the load index, and we use this load index to define the HPA strategy. So whenever load index is less than 0.3% or more than 0.8%, you can scale up or scale down your pods. So this feature significantly saves infrastructure cost by using auto-scaling and infrastructure as code, that is IOC. Again, Pranay will cover this in more like in depth in his technical presentation. So next feature is faster deployment. WebFOCUS Container Edition can be deployed in easily 4 to 5 steps. So it can be seamlessly made part of the automation and integration, that is CI/CD pipeline. So within minutes, customer can deploy their code application in the production. During upgrade and migration, it can also help promote code or application from lower environments to production environment. So it reduces lots of manual efforts and thus saves the time and thus saves the lots of cost as well. WebFOCUS Container is also more secure. It supports air gap installation. For those who don't know what is air gap installation, or it can call as air wall as well. It is a network security measure employed to ensure that secure computer network is physically isolated from unsecured network, such as public network or unsecured local network. Basically, let's say a company or enterprise is using it within the local network and they are not exposed to the outside network. So that is called as an air gap network. So WebFOCUS Container Edition do support that. So basically what we have to do is you pre-install all prerequisite softwares that are needed. And once that is done, WebFOCUS C can be installed without any connectivity to the outside unsecured network. So it makes it more secure. Further, we use latest RHEL UBI 9.x operating system, and we also support Java 11. So it makes it more secure. And time, we keep updating CVEs and in Container Edition, all of these components are more of a separate images. So if any of the image or component is impacted because of any CV, we can always update it and just rebuild that image, and we can back to more secure environment. So these are the few features of WebFOCUS Container Edition, but there are few notable features as well. So like WebFOCUS Container Edition help tool. So as we know, installation can get tricky at times, and when it is self-hosted product, it is essential and it is our responsibility to support customer with the installation and guide them throughout the process. So we have introduced this tool which can help them with pre-post deployment checks and help troubleshoot the issues if there are any. I have dedicated slide for it, so I'll cover features about that tool in the next slide. Next, we always keep WebFOCUS on-prem and WebFOCUS C releases in cycle in sync to maintain feature parity. So there are absolutely no feature gaps in on-prem or a container edition. So a customer can always leverage any of the products. Lastly, we firmly believe in open source technologies. We support them. So one such tool is Velero. So using Velero, customer can take scheduled and timely backups on regular basis or even daily basis. And using the same tool, they can restore it as well. So absolutely no data loss or no configuration loss. So this can be automated as well in their DevOps pipeline. So this is all about WebFOCUS Container Edition. I'll take a pause and check if there are any questions. I see there are no questions, so maybe I'll move on to next slide. Okay, so I'll now talk about WebFOCUS Containerization Health Check tool. So as I said in the previous slide, it can help with pre and post deployment checks and help troubleshoot the issues if any. We bundle this tool or utility in the installer itself, so it can be run from the server itself where you are building the images or where you are deploying it, right? And this feature or utility of these features of this utility can be divided into 3 parts. So one is before image building. So this tool, what it does, it checks for user, like if user has the sufficient permissions to build images. So if not, it would list down which all permissions are missing. So during image building, user shouldn't get any permission issues. Similarly, it can check for prerequisite software install like Helm, Chart, and etc. So if there are any softwares helping image building process, it will list down those. Even it checks for the hardware requirement, like if there is a insufficient storage space, it highlights that and it will ask for more space. Next is before deployment. It can check prerequisite tool for deployment needs. It can validate local Helm files and remote Kubernetes cluster. It can also verify if all components are properly configured. It can check if all permissions to create or edit or delete pods and configuration are there. It also checks the or it also validates images pool policies. And after deployment, where it is validates the deployment of WebFOCUS C in the Kubernetes cluster. It ensures that all custom WebFOCUS C components are running and also confirm their connectivity. So again, lastly, it can have a few more additional instructions where using describe command, it can show the overall health of WebFOCUS C component running on cluster. There is an upgrade command as well, which can be used whenever you are looking to upgrade your setup. It will check for and validate configuration and cluster environment details to check if there are any potential upgrade issues. So this is high level features of WebFOCUS Health Check tool. Pranay will actually give the demo and cover it during his presentation. So before I conclude, I'll walk you through the WebFOCUS C version history. As I said, we keep on-premise WebFOCUS and WebFOCUS containerization in sync. We follow the same release cycle. So here you can see in Feb 2020, we introduced containerization 1.0 for the first time. It is equivalent to WebFOCUS 9.0. It started latest WebFOCUS client and reporting server 9.0. In June 2022, we released 1.02. It is equivalent to WebFOCUS 9.02. We introduced AirCap installation. We upgraded to the latest Apache Solr 8.1.1.1. Again, like in October 22, we introduced 1.1.1, which is equivalent to WebFOCUS 9.1.1. We introduced WebFOCUS Health Check tool. We introduced or we updated OS to RHEL UBI 9.x. And recently we have introduced 1.2.0 WebFOCUS Containerization 1.2.0, which is equivalent to WebFOCUS 9.2.0. We upgraded the tool, we started supporting Java 11 and upgraded Apache Solar 9.1.1. So you can see we keep the release cycle in sync, and more importantly, you can see we time and time we keep upgrading third-party softwares or any software that we bundle. We keep updating it, so it makes it containerization more secure. Okay, so before I conclude my presentation, I would like to highlight the IBI advantages that customer get when they go with the IBI cloud offerings. IBI has a strong relationship with all the leading cloud providers, and we support latest cloud native technologies such as Kubernetes, Docker, etc. We have ISV Accelerate or AWS Advanced Technology Partner membership with AWS. We are a strategic with a strategic relationship. We cover co-selling, marketplace, technical and business development. We have as a cloud software group, we have over 30 products that are available on AWS, and we officially support and deployment on AWS. Similarly, IBI is a Microsoft Gold Cloud Platform partner, and a Microsoft Silver Data Analytics, Silver Data Center, and Silver Application Integration partner with again strategic relationship that covers both technical and business development aspects. So be it hosted solution like WebFOCUS Managed Cloud or a self-hosted solution like WebFOCUS Container Edition, we understand and support customers every move to the cloud, be it current requirement or future requirements. Whichever combination of product or services customer need, whenever they need, our platform empowers organization to turn data into actionable insight and generate meaningful business outcomes. Be it public or private cloud, hybrid cloud or multi-cloud strategy, as I discussed in the market rate, we are here to help and support all of those trends. So we can help by migrating your data from on-premise to cloud, or your configuration from on-premise to cloud. We support all of this. We have simplified deployment processes, which in turn makes faster deployment with horizontal pod scaling, that is HPA. We resolve budget wasting issues, and we extract optimum performances out of infrastructure by monitoring and logging and using KPIs. Overall, it is cost effective. So overall, our cloud or container edition, they deliver high performance architecture, they provide speed, they have simple administration things, and they are pretty much flexible. They are open to, like, their cloud. They are more secure. We fix CVs quickly, we upgrade softwares time and time, and we provide connectivity to any data ecosystem. So these are the high level features of our managed cloud solution and container edition. So I hope this has given insight into our offerings. I hope it will create some faith in us in IBI, and you'll like to try out our products. So please feel free to reach out to us, our sales team, our marketing team. They'll connect to us, our customer support, and we'll be more than happy to introduce you to this product. We can give you trials, and we can support you with any requirement. So here I'll stop. I will wait for a couple of minutes to take questions, and then I'll hand it over to Pranay for the next proceedings.
And so, Sachin, there was one question that came in. Is it possible to get a fully managed cloud solution in my own AWS account to utilize existing Direct Connect and other resources?
So managed in their own cloud, right? No, if it's managed, then it has to be like our support team, customer support, SREs, they will need access to their environment. And I'm sure customers won't prefer that. So as of now, we are not supporting that. That option is not available. Yep. The only options we have is our own hosted solution or the container edition.
Yeah. And then in regards to what the billing scheme looks like, you can reach out through your branch reps, either sales reps or whatever contacts you have, and we can get some of the billing details there.
Right, absolutely.
All right, guys, is there any other questions for Sachin? All right, if you have any, just again, submit those to the Q&A. We'll still be monitoring that if you think of one as we go. But for now, we will go ahead and turn it over to Pranay. The floor is yours.
Hey. Hello, guys. Hello. Welcome to this second part of the virtual user group. Let's get the disclaimers out. My name is Pranay, and I manage the platform and DevOps group in IBI. Been with TIBCO for many years. And talking about TIBCO, as Shay and we've been mentioning, correct? We've been all part of this cloud software group, and I worked for TIBCO for many years, and now part of IBI. So just fair disclosure, if I blurt it out, TIBCO, what I'm here is I'm mentioning is what is all about IBI, correct? So that's just out of habit, things just comes out. I have certification on Kubernetes and just playing with the cloud stuff for probably last 5 years. So excited to be part of it. Let's get started. I'm gonna reset my clock. Okay, so we're gonna start with the why containerized. Correct? I'm sure this is a question a lot of people are asking, in their organization, why do we need to use containerized payload, or why do we need to run on container? Correct? And then next we'll jump to what's the workflow, what is involved to be a WebFOCUS container edition, what you guys need to do it in order to get it running. We'll get in a little bit of deep into how the container works, how the containerized application gets built, a bit of deep dive on the containers and so forth. Next is you got the containers, now you want to deploy them, correct? So how do we get deploy? What's the process for deploying them? We're going to do a quick demo about WebFOCUS CE tool that Sachin just mentioned. We'll go in a little deep into how it works and a couple of demos about that tool. Last but not least, we're going to see the scaling for capacity, which is the HPA, which is something that is made possible when you run stuff, something like in Kubernetes, correct? So we'll see how it actually works. How do we let Kubernetes take decision on behalf of us? What magic is happening under the cover, and then we'll see that in action as well. With that, let's get started. The very first thing, I'm sure a lot of organizations are talking today saying, hey, you know what, Docker Kubernetes, we heard it's very difficult. Probably we might want to not do it. But at the same time, the higher up the management or the CIOs or the market trend is saying, hey, if you don't run stuff in container, if you don't run on cloud, probably you're going to miss out on all the advantage that the cloud is bringing, right? Now, there is always a middle ground. But let me, and I had quite a few slides for this, but just so that I will save some time, I'm going to jump to my conclusion class slide for this topic is, running on a containers, running with Kubernetes brings, I have the cheat sheet here, if you guys can probably read through it, but it's the portability, which is like, okay, IBI as a company gives me the scripts and this scripts for deploying, script for building Docker images. They tested exactly same image. I'm going to get the same recipe for building the image, and I'm going to run it. I'm going to get the same stuff that they tested. Same for scaling. I can start small, as Sachin was mentioning, the cloud cost is always expensive. You can start small on your own laptop or your own data center. And if everything looks good, you can take pretty much the same set of scripts and the images, Docker images, and then start running on cloud, because that's the advantage of doing stuff in container. Of course, CI/CD, you package test once and you keep repeating as you do a fine tuning to your operation or your application. Security, of course, this is the most important thing for many of us here, which is like, no chatty neighbors. If you have a couple of applications running on same machine and one of them is too chatty or somehow that it gets compromised, I don't want my workload to get compromised at the same time. So of course, container gives you that isolation. Flexibility, plug and play, as I said, you build once, you test once, then you can run on any cloud. And if you run on Kubernetes, which is what we recommend, you can run on local data center or run on any cloud, correct? Because every cloud provider now has a Kubernetes offering. Beyond that, I think the biggest point which is closest to my heart and why I love being on Kubernetes and Docker is this ecosystem, right? This is the whole cloud native foundation that comes up that has many companies or organization part of it that comes up with a something that is an open source, which is a free. Of course, they have a paid version as well. But the thing is, there is a solution for any problem that you come up with, right? And that's probably, I would say, the most important thing versus when you get vendor locked. You say, no, I can only work on certain kind of orchestration software, and then you need to rely on that vendor to give you a solution for that whatever problem you came up with. And of course, on top of that, it has a community where it gives us best practices and whatnot, correct? Some of the things that we do use quite frequently is Valero, as Sachin was mentioning, that is for our backup and restore solution that we recommend with the Kubernetes. Open policy agent is something for enforcing the policies. This is for how the workload gets deployed, managed, monitored, everything. Policy governs everything. Linkerd is one of my favorite CNCF project, which is a one-click mutual authentication enabling on an entire workload or entire WebFOCUS basically. So we'll see WebFOCUS is comprised of many components, and if you want to secure all of those communication manually, it's going to take you a long time and a lot of certificates to manage and keep rotating that. Last few is Prometheus and Helm, which are without them, the entire WebFOCUS container edition doesn't even function. Helm is something that we use to deploy our application, and the Prometheus is something that enables us to do the monitoring. And beyond monitoring is our Autoscaling. So the scaling that you saw, the HPA scaling that Sachin was mentioning, it is done because all the magic done by Prometheus, and of course stuff from IBA stuff as well. So let's move on. So what is involved with the WebFOCUS CE workflow? Like, how does it work? Correct? If somebody asks you in the hallway saying, okay, you went to this user session, tell me in a quick overview, how does it all work? Right? So let's look at that. One quick thing, I am talking about two components here, or the two software suites that is provided by IBI. One is the WebFOCUS Container Edition, and the second is a DSML, which is our data science that also runs in a container. So there are two different tar files or downloadables that you can get it from the IBI side. Both are container edition, both are containerized. But when I mention one, probably pretty much the second one has a pretty much similar way of doing stuff, just so that you guys get a fair idea of both the solutions. So workflow, what does it involve, correct? So simple, you get a downloaded tar file that is from the IBI that brings everything for you to start working with the WebFOCUS Container Edition. You do a Docker build. This machine where you're going to do a Docker build needs to have access to internet. So even with the air gaps solution that we have, the images, you have to build images once in your organization somewhere where you have access to internet. Right? Because we do pull some softwares over the internet from the Docker hub, and that's how the images get built. But after that, you are free to put it on your registry, and that's in next slide, and then use from there. And that's how the air gap works. And of course, the last step is you got the images, you want to now run them, you want to deploy them. We give you Helm scripts. Helm file is the tool that we run, and that deploys to Kubernetes. Now, that Kubernetes can be anything. Could be running on your laptop, could be running on your local data center, could be running on AWS, EKS, GKE, and any of those Kubernetes. Same scripts work. There are a little bit of changes and nuances we'll talk over the session, but end of the day, it's exactly the same scripts. Now, just one fair note, if you're going to try this on running this on locally on your Kubernetes and you happen to deploy or download the latest version of Kubernetes, there is a little bit of extra step, which is that the new Kubernetes, the newer version, does not see the Docker files or Docker contain images sitting on your machine by natively now. What I mean is basically Kubernetes has stopped supporting Docker runtime as a natively from 125 onward. So there's an extra step where you need to load these images into the Kubernetes environment. So there's a bunch of command, we put it in documentation, but that's the only additional step that you do it. And keep in mind, this is only when you're running stuff locally, like you're trying it out, and it could be the very first time you try it out and it might not work. So I don't want you to run into issues saying, hey, so IBI just told me like I can just build a Docker images and proceed with deployment, and then it's not working. But why the reason it's not working is probably you happen to have a latest Kubernetes where you need to do this extra step. Getting more realistic, of course, the way it works is you're going to build your images, you're going to push it to a registry. It could be any container registry on your local setup. And then, of course, the scripts also that we give you, the Helm files and all the other scripts, you pretty much will be checking in them into some kind of a version control, either Git and either GitLab or Jenkins will be actually driving them. And that's how your deployment will happen. More realistically, you will customize your Docker images, because once you deploy it, you might realize, oh, I want to connect to Oracle or MySQL server. Or some JDBC driver is not there, because we don't ship all kind of a JDBC driver part of our images. So you might want to customize our Docker file and rebuild and then push it to registry, and then CI/CD in your case in your organization is continuously pulling from this registry and doing the deployment. You could be doing progressive deployment or incremental deployment, and so forth, even for the upgrades as well. So it's not like we give you script once and done. Like every new version we do, we give you new scripts, you build the new images, because now there's a newer version of WebFOCUS available. Same CI/CD will pick it up, those images, and we'll do an upgrade, correct? In the future videos, I think I would say we can go a little bit of deep dive of how upgrade works. But let me tell you, in short, upgrade is exactly the same way you do it. It's just the same command, just extra flag that gets tagged along while you do the deployment. So it's not super difficult. Now, talking in future, this is something that we are planning to do it in next few months, or probably is that most of the customers are asking that why not just TIBCO do a build of Docker images, do all the scanning, make sure the images are good, they are highly optimized, free of vulnerability, and make it available on some public registry. And so we are thinking of doing that. So that will probably save your time, where you don't have to do a Docker build on your own data center or on your own machines. You just directly pull images from there. And of course, you are free to customize it and then use that in your CI/CD. We can go even one step further, which is we can even give you the Helm scripts or the charts in the GitHub, correct? So that means the images come from Docker or Docker Hub or any of the public registry we choose, and the charts come from some public version control. Excuse me. With that in case, we might not even need to give you the entire tar file, right? Because now everything is available from one of the publicly available source. Okay. Next is about image building. Quick intro into the container. So since we are talking about container, I think it's worth taking a little short trip on the side and digressing and understand how the container works. So the journey of containerizing of any application starts with, of course, your application. You have some application. In this case, we have an IBI app, and you want to containerize. Now you need to write something called Docker file that you're going to use to do a containerization. The good news is we give you Docker file. You proceed with Docker build. The first thing that we do is, or the Docker build starts to do is, it pulls an operating system and puts it into the image. Next thing, it downloads the tools that are needed for, such as you need a Python or a Java or anything that is not part of the operating system. You're going to install that. Next is, of course, your application. So in this case, since the build is happening on a machine that has access to the WebFOCUS software as well, it's going to start copying them into the image. So we do ship a tar version of it. While copying it, we untar it. So that's all the folder structure that you're familiar. It shows up in the container. Last but not least, we add some default configuration and we close the image, correct? So that's now the image is done. This is something that is becomes a contract between IBI or between your ops, the team that built the image and the team who is going to run. This is the contract. It's blob. It's a binary blob that can be checked in. That's what the registries are for. It has a default command sets. It has some labels attached to it, so you can search it. And now this is your image, correct? And now it's written in something called OCI compliant. I'll come to that. What does it mean and why it is so important? But the next thing you're going to do, and of course, there are two tools as of now that we know that can do this, which is one is a Docker, which is the most famous, but there's a build AH tool as well, which is also something that comes from Red Hat. It basically tries to optimize on top of what Docker has done, but unfortunately, it does in completely different way, where the Docker file that Docker has, it doesn't ingest the same file. So that we might have to give you a different format of instruction to build a Docker image. But the end result is exactly the same. It comes up with the image that is OCI compliant. Of course, the next thing you want to do is run it, correct? And once you run, it's called container. So far we've been building something called container image. And when you run, it becomes container. Again, if you know the programming world, it's the image is a Java class, and the container is an instance of that Java class, correct? So now when you run it, you're going to create a multiple instance, and that's exactly what happens. You create multiple copy of that container image, and that's called containers, correct? And you're not confined to just run one image out of or one container. Your application might need connection to database. It might connect to configuration server to pull some configuration in real time. It might store some information on some shared storage. You're going to open up the connection so that your end users can access it. And now, in order to do all this thing, so you can see here, it's this the image that we built is not self-sufficient. That means what I'm trying to say is you can't just run that image and you get WebFOCUS running. There are softwares, there are probably microservices which are just do only one thing. There's only like when you start, you run a web server and that's what it does. But in the WebFOCUS case, it's quite stateful application. So it needs a lot of configuration, and it also needs to persist the configuration. So what you need to take care of all this additional stuff. You need to basically build this scaffolding of additional infrastructure that can enables you to run WebFOCUS and forever, correct? That means you want to sustain the outages, and when you come back, you want to have pretty much the same application running. So that's why you need to have all this persistent storage available. And all this can be made much easily available if you use Kubernetes, because then you can script out entire infrastructure. That's what the infrastructure abstraction mean, and it does it for you, correct? And we give you script that does all this for you. Now, here I'm showing that Kubernetes can run containers in Docker, can run with the CRIO or containerd. These are all something called CRI, called container runtime interface, correct? Now, I'm throwing a lot of jargon phrases out there. Don't worry, when you get the slides, there is a whole glossary section which describes each of them in detail. So feel free to read that. Now, talking about CRI, what does it mean, correct? What it means is there are a lot more companies today working on coming up with a more optimized way of running your container than what's available out there. That means Kubernetes is open to plug and play with any CRI. And Google is writing one, Amazon is writing one. Everybody wants to write a much optimized way of running your container. The end of the day, your business application runs as it is, but then they add their secret sauce in the security, in the connectivity, in the auditability, like how you can audit all your system calls. So in order to plug and play, you need to write your container that it can be read and run by any of the CRI out there. That's why this OCI compliant comes into picture, where Docker builds the image in such a way that any runtime interface, any engine that can run your container can read that image and run it. Right? Now, how it runs it, it's their secret sauce, but the point is, as long as they are in a CRI compliant, they can run. Enough about that. Now we go back to WebFOCUS. So the question is, what all run from WebFOCUS in container, correct? And do I have any questions? No, so far. Okay. Now we are all here because we all love and use WebFOCUS, correct? And this WebFOCUS is this the great software that can take your data, can build a story out of your data, help you visualize it, build the reports. You can share that reports with your end users, your internal customers, internal users. Reports can be emailed to you. Sky is the limit with WebFOCUS. I mean, literally. I mean, I'm still learning stuff with that. I don't know that WebFOCUS can do. Now, the question is, I love it. I know how it all laid out. This is exactly probably all the components that WebFOCUS have. Bit too many things on a screen, but we can ignore the databases, of course, because the database, it's the source of truth. You're getting the data from there. There is a bunch of components that WebFOCUS have, and then your browser is your endpoint. Let's take those out. All this component, what remain is what makes the WebFOCUS what WebFOCUS does today. And there are two components you see here. Is one, the top part is the WebFOCUS, the core software, and then the DSML services, which are your data science services. The question is, what all is containerized? And the answer is everything here is containerized. Everything you see runs in a container. That means the reporting server, cache manager, CLM, application server, even the proxy and the load balancers, even the database, even all the microservices for data science. Everything is containerized. Now, with the containerization comes a little bit of decision making. What I'm trying to say is, since we give you the recipe about how the containers, how the WebFOCUS run, we had to make certain decisions on behalf of you. So let's go through that. The very first thing is operating system. So this operating system that we have selected, as Sachin had mentioned, it's Red Hat Linux. It basically runs all our containers. It's the same operating system throughout. Next is app server. We need to pick one of the app server. There's a Tomcat was an option. There's a Jetty is option. We went with Jetty. The database for storing the repo server, basically for the app server, you are free to pick your own. This is not something that we can find you, but if you use our script to get stuff running on your laptop, you would get a database which is a Postgres, right? Now, CLM needs some kind of a config store, and it's what we decided to use is etcd. It's a key value pair, a very famous data store that a lot of applications are using, including even Kubernetes. Without etcd, Kubernetes is dead. Solar, you could be using your own Solar, but today, if you use in container, it's a Solar cloud, and what it means is basically Solar comes with a Zookeeper and whatnot. So it's an entire solution that is good for the cloud solution. Last but not least, you see something called Matrix Collector, which is, you don't see it in this screen, but this, as I said, this is the Prometheus software that is constantly scanning data from the WebFOCUS reporting server and other components, and keeping track of how your application is doing. And based on this data, the Kubernetes makes a decision about scaling. So I have half an hour left. I think I should be good to go. If there are any questions, feel free to put it in Q&A so we can try to answer it. Now, the question is, how does all this image get built, correct? So these are the main images that we care about. We take one more short side digression about how does, when you get a tar file, how does it look like, correct? And because I want to show you from where you're going to start building your Docker images. So the very first thing you see is a bunch of PDF and READMEs. This gives you all the good stuff about how to get started. Next thing is there is a build-image.sh file. This is the Uber script that actually calls bunch of Docker build command, and all the Docker files are also given to you there in their respective folders. But this is a script that does all the image building in one shot for you. So you run this and you get all the images. Next is how you're going to do deployment, correct? For that, we give you a Helm file, and there is a Helm file.yaml file, which is the one that does the major deployment. But we also give you an infra deployment as well. So if you want to use infrastructure given by IBI, such as Postgres database, Solar, Zookeeper, and all those things, you're going to run one more deployment. So that's this reverse order. You run the infrastructure first, then you run the WebFOCUS. So all those files are available here. Second last is the version.properties. Sachin did mention there are a couple of WebFOCUS Containerized has a different version than the WebFOCUS main software. If you want to see the mapping, this is the file you're going to see it. And the last but not least is the entire WebFOCUS software is also packaged part of the tar file, and that's the whole compressed version you are seeing it here. So what you do is you run this build images.shell script. This is going to do all the Docker build. Little bit of FYI here is that before you do your Docker build, you're going to pick something called an image tags. Now we do give you a tags that is selected by IBI, but you could be tagging your images differently. So if you want to tag them differently, there is a shell script that we give you that has all the tags predefined. You go and feel free to change that. And the good thing is then the same shell script will be used during the deployment so that we know exactly what tags you selected. So that's done. After the script runs, you're going to get 5 container image, correct? And you will see 5 containers on the top, and you might say, oh, good, those are the 5 actually they're going to run. But the fun fact is they are not actually those 5 who runs it, correct? Now let's see what I mean. So I color coded the containers with the names. So you can see the CLM, the cluster manager and reporting server uses something called WFS. App server and report caster is using an image called WFC. Cache manager, which is a Node.js application, uses its own image. Now there are 2 additional images. They are not there in the screen. It says one is WFS etc, and one is Postgres Alpine. You might ask, Pranay, why are we building that then? The answer is the reporting server we have split up into 2 parts. One is the reporting server, the main application, which has all the SO files and binary, and then there is the whole static content, which is all the visualization charts, all the geo mappings, all the geo analytical stuff. That is part of something called WFS etc image, which is its only job is to be in the container image, and during the deployment time that gets copied into a shared volume. And that's it, its job is done. Similarly, the Postgres Alpine image is also same thing. It is only used during the installation or the deployment type. We ship some SQL tools for loading data into Postgres, and we also ship some Solar schemas, because Solar needs to have some schema. So all that gets loaded into Solar using this Postgres Alpine image. So in short, all these images are blessed and built and I would say all of them are actually provided by TIBCO. So it's like as long or IBI, let me correct myself, and they will be maintained and managed going forward. And as I said, going forward, we might even give you these images ready so you to pull that from the public repository. Now, let's go into a little bit of deploying. How do the image gets deployed? A little bit of deployment overview. So again, you have something called a build server. You get the tar file from TIBCO. You do the build process. You ran the build images. You get this 5 images pushed to, or 5 images actually built, and you need to push them into your registry because we don't know where your registry is. Now, this is the build part is done, right? If you remember, there were like those 3 parts. One is download, build, and then deploy. How does the deployment work? So for deployment, what I envision is like you have a separate machine, right, which is running your CI/CD. And they can be on the same machine. There's no hard rule, but that the scripts that comes with the tar file, you copy them, or somehow you copy either to your own version control and then gets pulled into your CI/CD. The deployment server then has a connectivity to your Kubernetes cluster. So here I'm showing a three node cluster, could be running on AWS, could be running local, doesn't matter. As long as your kubeconfig, which is what kubectl tool uses, as long as the kubeconfig is pointing to the correct Kubernetes cluster, we will use that and do the deployment. So you do the first thing you're going to do is Helm file sync. This, what does this do is this is going to put up the infrastructure, correct? So there are 2 folders, as I told you. There is a Helm file, and then inside Helm file there is an infra folder. You go to the infra folder, you do this Helm file sync that gives you the infrastructure which is needed for WebFOCUS to run. Again, we are thinking that you probably bring nothing from your own infrastructure. So the solution is that let's give everything that you need. You can play with it. You can try on your laptop. Everything gets set up for you. Then you want to do is, okay, fine. I like it. Now tell me, how do I put my own Postgres server? How do I plug in my own Solar? And then in that case, you might skip this infra altogether. Not so easily, but I think, my point is the infra is optional, such as, okay, that's done. You do one more Helm file sync. That now starts to put up your WebFOCUS deployment, correct? And this is where all the storage gets created first, because we want to persist all your WebFOCUS configuration. Then we start to pull images from on the registry and start the WebFOCUS components, CLM, meta server, application server, reportcaster. Then the services gets created, which is all the endpoints for your application, or for how to get hold of the WebFOCUS GUI. The ingress, if you have it running on cloud, there's an ingress that needs to be created as well. So that way you can expose your WebFOCUS front end to all the way to outside world. And that's it. This is how you're going to deploy your WebFOCUS. Now, I'm showing you there's something called -e dev command. Or there's like, what is that? And that's basically, that's the nuance about how, if you're going to deploy on a cloud versus you're going to deploy on your laptop, we give you some pre-configured settings that you might want to use it. So if you're doing on your laptop or your dev setup, you want to use -e dev, we can go in detail what's in there in the future. But basically the idea is we did all the permutation. We figured out, okay, if it is a laptop setup, there is a set of configuration we can use. If it is cloud, then we want to use -e cloud. And so forth, right? So deployment bit in detail now, since that slide was a bit old. Now, of course, as Sachin said, we also give you this WebFOCUS CE tool, and this is exactly the same steps. I would say is just a best practice that you're deploying on your local setup or on a cloud. The first thing you use WebFOCUS CE tool to do a pre-deployment check. So it uses your tags that you have defined. It uses your configuration. It uses your kubeconfig file, connects to your remote cluster, does a dry run deployment, checks all the validity, like looks good. I think the deployment is going to succeed. And if it comes back with success, you have a good chance of having a successful deployment. Second thing is you're going to run WebFOCUS deployment. The first thing you want to do is, again, if you are doing on your laptop, or even for cloud, and you're just trying to get the entire WebFOCUS deployed as it is, you're going to run a Helm file sync from an infra folder that puts up your infrastructure. Second, you go one directory up, and then you do a second deployment that actually deploys entire WebFOCUS stack for you. After that is done, you might want to check if everything got deployed, correct? And you run the WebFOCUS CE tool again. Now, again, this is just a slide. I would say I'll skip it. You will have it in your presentation. What it means is, what's trying to say is that we test our WebFOCUS deployment or the container edition of WebFOCUS with all this major cloud provider, EKS, GKE, AKS, OpenShift, or even the local setup. The only thing difference is that each of this cloud provider have their own way of creating volumes and own way of creating some security rules, correct? So that's the only difference that you might have to take care of it. Once that is taken care of, the scripts works as it is. There's pretty much, like, I would say 10% changes that you might have to do it to actually run on whichever EKS or whichever managed Kubernetes that you decided to use. So deployment cheat sheet. Let me just get this all out of the way so you can have it. So this is all the commands that you're going to run. If you're starting on your shell script or on the shell command, you're going to export the environment variable that actually describes the tags that you use. Second is you're going to run the pre-deploy check. Third is you're going to build the infrastructure by Helm file sync. Second, or the fourth, is you're going to go one directory up, run one more Helm file sync, and you get the WebFOCUS deployed. Last is you're going to check saying, okay, if everything got deployed. Now, if you are going to use a dev profile, so your command will change and you will say it's Helm file -e dev sync. At the same time, then your post deploy should also change, because the WebFOCUS CE tool also needs to know what environment you use. Now, in the future, we might detect this automatically by looking at your cluster or peeking into cluster, but as of now, you need to pass that information. Similarly, you would have actually done the pre-check with -c dev as well, because we don't know what's your intention of target platform. So that's kind of a cheat sheet about all the commands that you're going to need to get WebFOCUS deployed, and that's probably something like you can print this and keep it on your desktop if you want to. So this is a little bit of demo or recording about how the WebFOCUS gets deployed. So here on the left, you will see all the pods getting created, and on the right are all the Helm charts. Now, the definition of pod, Helm, I think probably you can read the glossary. I would love to go in detail, but I think we are out of time. Here you can see the infrastructure got created. Now I'm running the Helm file -e devsync, which is going to put up the WebFOCUS part. You can see the age of the pods. As I promised, it takes close to 10-15 minutes. You can keep looking them. Now the Helm file, the second deployment is going on. We are starting to put WebFOCUS stuff, but before that, we need to populate the database. We need to populate the Solar. We need to populate samples. We need to run iSetup. All those good stuff is happening. After that, the ADA server starts to come up. You can see ADA server is coming up. There is still some DB config going on. Once that is finished, ADA server goes into fully running state. Once ADA server is running, the app server comes up, and that's pretty much the last step. After app server comes up, we run something called a smoke test. So we run a bunch of tests to make sure everything that needs to be running is there. So this is like WebFOCUS CE tool can do a post deploy check, but part of the deployment, we run a smoke test as well, which actually just makes a bunch of REST call to the app server and ask for its health. And once that is done, we come back with a 0 written code. That means the script succeed, and you have your WebFOCUS running. So that's what it happens. Let's jump to the WebFOCUS CE tool. I think the one that Sachin has been talking about. I really see this as like a Swiss Army or multi-tool, correct? It can do many things, and we're going to keep enhancing this tool. The basic principle that we use to enhance this tool is to any issues that we see on the customer side, like, hey, you know what? We had to spend like half an hour or one day to figure out what was wrong, why the customer's deployment was not going. We want to take that feedback into this tool, and we want this tool to check this so that next time no other customer should run into that. Right? That's a basic guiding principle we want to use for this tool. So 4 things is what I think that I would say there are things. Now there are more things that is coming into this tool as we speak. But the one is it can do a check on the machine where you're going to do a Docker build. Does it have enough disk space? Is a Docker install? Is Docker running properly? Does it have internet connectivity? All those kind of tests. Second is a pre-deploy check. This is, I would say, most important check. You want to get a good confidence on your deployment, saying, okay, I have everything is what I need, and my deployment is going to succeed. The one piece of advice is you need to pass exactly the same setting that you do it for your deployment. You pass this to this tool. And if this passes, there's 99% chance everything is going to succeed, right? If it fails, I'm going to go and enhance this tool to probably detect that as well. Second, or the third thing is after your deployment is done, you do a post deploy. Again, it does check for you saying, okay, you wanted to deploy this, does it, everything got deployed and everything is running or not? And one thing to keep in mind, you can run this after 5 minutes of deployment, after 5 days, or after 5 months, doesn't matter. It will actually figure out what needs to be running and it come back with success, that is everything running or not. Last but not least, it can also collect information. So this is something we are designing for people who want to build some reports on saying, okay, what's running for WebFOCUS, what's the status. It could be that something you can take output of this and pass it on to support team because you're trying to open a support call. It's just mainly a query tool, which is simply a read only. This just captures information from your cluster. So the idea is you run this tool before doing build, after doing build, or before doing deployment and after doing deployment, right? And the idea is in the next phase, we're coming up saying, can this tool do the deployment itself? Correct. If you remember, you have to go to this infra folder and do deployment, then you have to go one directory up and do deployment. So the idea is, can this tool do everything for user? User will just ask bunch of like user will answer a bunch of questions and do the deployment. Now, most of the time, deployments are done in automated way. So you have to pass the configuration to the WebFOCUS CE tool, whatever you want to do, because your CI/CD is running. And it can do deployment as well, but it will have a both way of, like, if you want to do it in first time, you want some way of asking question and answering it and then doing the deployment, it can do that as well. But of course, we do develop these tools for CI/CD as well. So talking about CI/CD and this tool, let's see this in help in action. So the first thing you can do is you can do a check. There's a tool, there is an option or a command called check. It will do a check saying, okay, this tool is in good shape. You can do --help on any of the command and will give you much detailed command. Here I'm running a check on a build. So this is the one that says if the Docker is installed, internet connectivity, and blah, blah, blah. If it succeeds, the exit code is 0. So this is where probably your automation can actually detect should it to proceed or not to proceed. Next one is I'm doing a pre-deploy check. This one will check if everything is that you have in your configuration and your cluster is all in sync. That means I can connect to cluster, I can create stuff. There is nothing that our WebFOCUS is running there, because it could be that you are doing some retries. You deployed something failed. There is a way to destroy everything, but probably some reason things did not get destroyed. This tool will detect that, saying, hey, you know what, something is running, you might want to do further cleanup. It actually also does a certain pseudo deployment. So it is actually kind of a write operation into your cluster. So to be mindful of that, it does write to something to your cluster, but we try to clean up whatever we write. For some reason, you want to see further in a deep dive, like, oh, what is it this tool doing? So you can run with this -verbose option. It'll give you a whole lot of information about exactly what it is doing. Correct. So if you're curious, you want to see what exactly it does, feel free to run with the verbose, or we might be troubleshooting with you, getting on a call, and we're trying to see why this tool doesn't work. We might ask you to run this as well. Last one is the post deploy. In this case, I want to check everything is deployed properly. I'm running the post deploy check and it fails. Why? Because probably I did not use the same environment variable or environment key, which I did a deployment, correct? So the idea here is that the persistent volumes that we create needs to be in a certain modes running, and default it expects in certain mode, but with the -e dev profile, it runs indifferently. It did not know that it needs to check on -e dev. So now I'm running with -e dev, which is, hey, my deployment is for a development setup. And now it passes, saying, okay, fine. In that case, I found everything what needs to be there. Everything is running, comes back with success. So that was WebFOCUS CE tool. Last 20 minutes I have got is, I would say before the question and answer, is scaling for capacity. This is the HPA part. This is where all the magic happens. Things get automatically scaled up or scaled down. And how does it all work? Okay. So imagine you have, this is a very simplified version of your setup, correct? Because I'm only showing things that are really important in this case. You have a reporting server, there's a load balancer. So Kubernetes always have a load balancer. So there's a built-in load balancer is in the Kubernetes that it says, don't worry, if you want to run multiple pods, I'll give you one fixed endpoint that you can use to hit that pod, and I will automatically assign the request to one of the pods or one of the endpoint of your application. So you have that all set it up. You have it tuned your application for, let's say, for 3 concurrent users, correct? I mean, WebFOCUS can support millions or thousands, if not. But let's say you say, okay, my expectation is I'm going to get 3 concurrent users and they're going to load application, and I have set it up for certain SLAs that they can, if they have to wait for 2 seconds, it's okay. Now, how does WebFOCUS or how does Kubernetes know that this is a good setup? This is, I don't need to intervene, setup is running as expected. The way it works is it uses something called horizontal pod scaler, HPA, which says, give me or tell me what should your application be, in what scenario your application is healthy, correct? So usually it's a number of CPU usage or memory usage, but it can also support a custom metrics. And in this case, we as IBI, we tell Kubernetes, we know how our application works the best. We will give you a custom metrics. You use that to make a decision. Now, what is all this custom metrics, correct? So first of all, let's see how it all works, correct? So Kubernetes time to time asks HPA to check the status of how the ADA server is doing, correct? And so the HPA does not directly talk to ADA server. It actually talks to something called a custom metrics adapter or custom metrics collector. In this case, it's a Prometheus. As I said, without Prometheus, this whole solution does not work. The Prometheus job is to every 15-second poll the metrics from reporting server and says, tell me how you're doing it, correct? It takes that, aggregates everything, keeps it ready for HPA to make a decision. The metrics that we produce, that we give it to Prometheus adapter looks something like this. The most important thing that we care for today's demo is this something called system running average load index ratio. It's quite a mouthful, but it's the basically number that is it could be the value from 0 to 1. 0 means, there's no load on a system. 0.5 is where the system is running into the max throughput. Beyond that, I think it's going to start to degrade the performance. So that is something that we came up with. It's automatically detected and calculated by reporting server. There's a whole lot of magic that a reporting server team has done behind that. But now this is what we give it to Prometheus, saying, okay, this is the metrics. What Prometheus does, it aggregates that. And now when the reply goes back to Prometheus, it has aggregated when the reporting server, when the Kubernetes is asking HPA to make a decision. If you actually query the HPA, so there is a way to query it. You can say kubectl get HPA. You will see the ADA server targets is the current usage is 280, which is 0.28 multiplied by 100, and the threshold for scaling is 500, so which is 0.5, as I told you. So if things goes up more than 500, and I don't want to scale it right away because it could be a blip of load, I don't worry about that. But if it sustains for 2 minutes, I think that's what we have set up. You are free to change that. If the load sustains more than 2 minutes, that's called stabilizing window. I want to add a new pod. Now, in this case, Kubernetes also says how many new pod you want to add. I will add 1 at a time, but what's your max? In this case, you can see the max pod is 2. You could set 5, you could set 10, depending on how you have. This is where, again, you start small, you can grow big because your cluster is big now. You want to scale more, it's up to you. Correct? Now, let's see all this in action. Correct? The idea is, suddenly the load started to go up. Correct? And this is the chart that your user is pulling. There are actually 6 charts that needs to get it from reporting server. If you're going to get more and more requests, the CPU will go up. Not necessarily, it's depending on how you have developed your charts. Some charts could be very efficient of delegating the work or the computation to database. But let's say in this case, I use something called data rack, which is very CPU and disk intense. In this case, CPU will get, or the reporting server will get busy very fast. So let's see that in action. The very first window shows you the HPA status. Second is the messages that it builds or prints when the scaling event happens. The bottom part is the CPU usage and memory usage of all the pods. On the right-hand side, you see the top of I'm running on the machine itself. So you can see the CPU usage of machine. And the last is the load index that's currently emitted by reporting server to the Prometheus. So currently it's 0.46. The HPA is saying that I don't need to scale. CPU is also under control for now. Keep an eye on the time that it's going to take for the scaling. So this is the clock. You want to keep an eye on it. In a few seconds, you will see the load going up, correct? And suddenly it jumped to 62% usage. The reporting server does not start to go up. Like, I mean, in this case, since I'm speeding up the video, you saw that the number jump, but it does not tell or it does not emit the load saying I'm very busy. It's also a rolling window. So it takes close to 3 to 4 minutes for it to detect that load is up. So it is doing its own calculation. Then it starts to emit saying the load has gone up. Reporting the HPA sits on that data for 2 minutes. It says, if I see the load going up for more than 2 minutes, I'm going to scale. And you want to see right here, the scaling event happened. There's an event also generated saying, I scaled up to new size of 2. Why? Because the metrics went up. I was monitoring this metrics and it went beyond the threshold value, and I'm going to scale. So what happened at the end result? Now you have one more reporting server working in your environment. The users, hopefully they suffered for the first 2 minutes, but after that, they're going to start getting your better performance because now there is 2 reporting server. The CLM is there. CLM knows about all the reporting server. It's going to tell app server to do the load, it's going to do the smart load balancing. And here you go. Now you have your users automatically served by 2 reporting server, correct? Depending on how the load is. Now, the reverse is also true. And this is the most important part. This is where the cost saving comes into picture, is where you start small, you grow big, but you also shrink. And this is part of the running on the cloud. You want to save your cloud resources. The Kubernetes can also auto scale it down. It can also scale the machines down, scale the pod down, and that's also built into HPA. So currently it's 5 minutes. If the load is less than 0.5 for 5 minutes, it will start to scale down. Again, you can control. You might have some long running processes, so you might want to do it, might not want to do it right away, but that's under your under control. And I think that concludes all my slides. As I was saying, there is this whole glossary stuff that's available for you guys if you want to review it. But with that, thank you very much. If there are any questions, I'm more than happy to take it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Pranay. Any questions that you guys have, please go ahead and submit those now. We have just a couple of minutes left, but we're happy to take any questions that you may have. Just as a reminder, again, this session was recorded. You will receive a copy of the recording sometime by tomorrow. You will also receive a copy of the presentations that they showed. So be on the lookout for that. I also threw in the chat a link to our evaluation form. If you guys could please take a moment and fill that out, your feedback is greatly appreciated. So last call for any questions. We have a quiet group today. All right. Well, Sachin, Pranay, thank you so much for presenting today. It was a pleasure. A lot of great information here. Maybe their minds are just wowed. You just wowed them, and they're speechless at this point. But thank you so much for the presentations today, guys. It was great material.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks everyone for attending and scheduling this. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks, Shay. Thanks, Angie. Thanks, Mark. All right.
All right, guys. We will see you all
welcome.
soon. Let us know if y'all need anything, and we'll see you guys next month for our June virtual user groups. So take care, everyone.
Thank you.